But anyway, this poem is set. Well, it's about a summer that a summer job that I had working in the kind of obsolete lime kilns, working in what is now a car panel warehouse. Bowman's car panels. Look it up. The land is a well-kept secret. From the row of houses lining the main road of the village, the fields tumble greenly down to the river and then shoot back up to the top of the valley, a wide, world-shunning vista. Plantations of pines clumped against dry stone walls. Moors on the periphery, pillars of smoke in the distance. The train track follows the curve of the river as it severs the dale's green swathe gently in two, winding through the old station empty since they stopped digging limestone decades ago. Quarries hide in the woods on the hillsides, their last hewn stones wound round with grass, conifers and craters where men once crowded to work. It's all right. A long, blank summer. I buried myself in the car panel warehouse, working 8 till 7, endless weeks, raw calves, hauling sumps, windscreens, bonnets. Black Monday mornings wilting in the sunless heat, pocketing small change, pointlessly stoic. Bowman, the village cartoon, fat, cigar-smoking capitalist, would wander down from his boss's lair, a tumoured warren, conservatories, protuberances, a gothic folly of the 80s. When he stooped behind us, the air greyed over with greed, magnetised our last filaments of strength, his charcoal laugh, the true sound of a century in which the old villainy is occulted but stoked, unabated. At bait time, we sat in an oil-stained hut. Jordan's breasts smiled at us from a faded poster, sun-worn diptych of the 90s. Those men hated that job, but they sat there for each other, trying to make jokes ring, finding ways to overlap, mostly agreeing. It was here that I saw paradise for the first time, in the arrangement of people, hatred of the residual cartoons, the proximity of minds. I think about the warehouse every day, though I rarely go back to the village, and some say it doesn't exist. The second poem, I'm quite taken with the ballad form, which is, for people who don't know, it's 4 beats followed by 3 beats in verses. But I can't really be bothered to write a long ballad, so I'm quite interested in writing very short ballads. This is a very short ballad poem. So it's about Delia, Derbyshire, who lots of you, I'm sure, are aware of. But this is actually about a late phase in Delia Derbyshire's trajectory. So she had quite a tragic life. She died of alcoholism eventually in the 80s after having been a seminal electronic musician in the 60s and 70s. This poem is set when she lived in the Anglo-Scottish borders, not far from where I grew up. She married a man from Haltwhistle. Some of you know where Haltwhistle is. It's quite an unlikely place for Delia Derbyshire to end up in. Anyway, this is called The Exile of Delia Derbyshire. 12 miles south of the border, in a farmhouse empty of sound, I ply my ambient trade, cutting tape, carving the wind. In the 60s, at flower-filled parties, those echoing scales in the air. In the 60s, at flower-filled parties, in my quant gown and my bobbed hair. Now I drink glasses of bitter in Cumbrian working men's bars, playing darts, fading into the margins, flutter of wind in my ears. Okay, I'm going to do two football poems now, of slightly different tones. The first poem is called On the Proposed Renaming of St James's Park. St James's Park, for those of you who don't know, is the stadium of Newcastle United, which was renamed St James's Park at sportsdirect.com, which seemed to symbolise something to me. The poem is actually based on a Geordie joke, which I won't recount, but the punchline is apparently it was a turtle massacre. Okay. On the proposed renaming of St James's Park. Let this be a lesson to you. Names don't matter. Remember Shakespeare, so sure. Think of Derrida. Meaning slips and slides is not fascistic, cannot be controlled, has no memory, soon runs out of juice. See this wagon full of terrapins, stalling and then failing in a final abject disaster halfway down the A69. So the next poem is another football poem. It's actually about the Hillsborough disaster, which I'm sure doesn't need any glossing. It's another short poem. It's called 1989. They came swooshing like water out of Lepping's Lane, leaping into the match day sun. Soon bodies ghosted the gym. All I dreamt of back then were vague summaries of light, now nightmares of black hammers pummeling the helpless. Wanting to write a kind of topographical utopian poem about London, and it ended up shorter than I thought it would. So this poem's called What Socialist London Would Look Like. Not perfect, of course, but better. Poem, it's called The Last Tape. Crowds streamed along the path to the industrial estate. There were rumours of spring, of oxygen. We arrived at the waste disposal unit. A cargo of goods spilled out of a storage container tied to a lorry. Linoleum rolls, laptops, rabbit cages. Everything had rotted to mush. A white polyester football shirt lay in the sun, sighing with mould. The crowd formed a circle. You came to me carrying an armful of rubbish. The sun splashed ribbons of light over your beautiful hair. After hours of waiting, a cassette tape fell from the pile. We shivered. I kissed your mud-covered hands, and the music on the tape spread and echoed through the crowd like holy thunder.